Remove those hideous lights this instant!
That's what HOA President Vivian Sterling screamed at me on Christmas Eve morning, her $1,000 Lululemon outfit practically glowing with rage as half the neighborhood watched from their windows. I'm standing on my ladder in North Dallas, just finishing my simple warm white Christmas lights, when this woman storms across the street like she owns the place.
Those embarrassingly plain lights are ruining our property values. Take them down immediately or face foreclosure proceedings.
Kids frozen on sidewalks, neighbors peeking through curtains. Me, publicly humiliated on the most magical day of the year. All because my holiday display wasn't extravagant enough for Queen Vivian. She had no idea what was coming. By Christmas morning, her massive, extravagant Christmas display had completely vanished, and the whole neighborhood got to witness her epic meltdown. Let me back up and paint you the full picture. I'm Marcus Reed, 51 years old, been a master electrician for 30 years. I've wired half the houses in Preston Estates, this exclusive gated community where oil money meets tech wealth. We're talking 8,000 square foot McMansions with circular driveways and 3-car garages. My wife Jennifer and I moved here 5 years ago when business was good. Our daughter Emma was starting high school, and we wanted her in the best district. The house stretched our budget, but we made it work. I'm proud of what I built, a solid electrical contracting business serving luxury homes across North Dallas. But this past year hit us hard. Jennifer had emergency gallbladder surgery in September. What should have been routine turned complicated. 3 surgeries, 6 weeks off work, and $15,000 in medical bills that insurance didn't cover. Our Christmas budget? Let's just say it wasn't going to compete with our neighbors' displays. See, Preston Estates doesn't do Christmas. It does Christmas extravaganza. We're talking $80,000 of synchronized LED madness. 40-foot trees that pulse to music. Animatronic reindeer that dance every 15 minutes. Fog machines creating winter wonderland effects in 78-degree Texas heat. The smell of artificial snow mixing with the natural cedar from my handmade wreath creates this weird chemical cocktail that burns your nostrils. Every December, our HOA transforms the main entrance into what the local news calls Dallas Christmas Spectacle. Cars line up for miles. Families drive from 3 counties away just to see our neighborhood. The synchronized light show runs every half hour from 6 p.m. to midnight, accompanied by speakers that blast Christmas music loud enough to hear from the next zip code. And orchestrating this whole production, Vivian Sterling, 47 years old, married to an oil executive worth about $15 million. She drives a white Range Rover that's cleaner than most people's kitchens. I've never seen her without perfect makeup, even when she's walking her tiny designer dog at 6 a.m. Vivian's been HOA president for 6 years, ever since she moved here from Highland Park. She has this obsession with what she calls maintaining property values through aesthetic excellence. Translation: everything has to look expensive, or she considers it a threat to her investment. Now, our family Christmas tradition is simple elegance. My dad taught me that good craftsmanship speaks for itself. So I spent 3 weekends hand-carving a wreath from cedar I cut myself. I outlined our roofline with warm white LED lights, the good ones that last 20 years, not the cheap stuff that burns out after 1 season. And I built a nativity scene from reclaimed barn wood with a soft spotlight that creates this beautiful warm glow. Total cost? $347. It was tasteful, timeless, and told a story. Emma helped me design every detail. She said it looked like something from a Christmas card. But in a neighborhood where the average Christmas display costs more than most people's cars, my understated approach apparently sent the wrong message. The morning I finished installing everything, there was Vivian marching across my lawn with a clipboard and that look she gets when she's about to ruin someone's day. "Marcus," she said, not bothering with pleasantries, "this display violates community standards." I climbed down from my ladder, feeling the December heat already making my shirt stick to my back despite it being barely 8 a.m. "Morning, Vivian. How so?" She pulled out an official-looking form. "Insufficient decoration density. Your display fails to meet the investment standards we've established for this community. You have 48 hours to hire an approved decorator and bring this up to acceptable levels." I looked at my handiwork, then at the synchronized chaos visible behind her house. And what exactly are acceptable levels? Minimum $5,000 investment. I can recommend several designers who understand our aesthetic requirements. That's when I knew this wasn't about Christmas. This was about control. The citation Vivian handed me looked official enough to frame. Community standards violation, in bold red letters across the top. Below that, a list of requirements that would make a Vegas casino blush: minimum lighting density per square foot, mandatory synchronized elements, and my personal favorite, thematic coherence with neighborhood aesthetic vision. I read it twice, then looked up at her. "You're serious about this?" "Dead serious. The Aesthetics Committee voted unanimously. Your display diminishes the impact of our community investment." Here's what she wasn't saying. My simple, classy decorations made her $80,000 light show look like a carnival had exploded in our front yards. When visitors compared my understated elegance to the synchronized chaos next door, guess which one looked tasteful? But Vivian wasn't done. She'd called an emergency committee meeting for that evening. Mandatory attendance for affected residents, meaning me. The meeting was held in the community clubhouse, this glass and marble monument to suburban excess that smells like expensive carpet cleaner and barely contained resentment. "Ladies and gentlemen," Vivian announced to the 7 committee members and dozen neighbors who showed up for the drama, "we have a situation that threatens everything we've built here." She clicked through a PowerPoint presentation titled "Maintaining Excellence, the Preston Estates Standard." Slide after slide of our neighborhood's Christmas displays from previous years, each more elaborate than the last. Then came the slide labeled "Current Compliance Issues," and there was my house, photographed from the most unflattering angle possible. "This property," she said, using her laser pointer like a weapon, "fails to meet community investment standards. We require immediate remediation or face daily fines of $300. $300 a day. Jennifer was still recovering, Emma needed money for college applications, and our medical bills were already stretching us thin. The committee knew this. Vivian knew this. "What if I can't afford $5,000 for Christmas lights?" I asked. "Then perhaps you should consider whether Preston Estates is the right fit for your family." That night, I couldn't sleep. Jennifer was tossing and turning beside me, stress making her surgical recovery worse. At 2 a.m., I went to my workshop and started doing what I always do when I'm angry. I started researching. See, when you wire a neighborhood from the ground up, you get to know its electrical systems pretty intimately. I pulled out the original blueprints from when I installed Preston Estates' infrastructure. Every circuit, every meter, every connection was documented in my files. That's when I noticed something odd. The community Christmas display, all 80,000 watts of it, should have required its own dedicated electrical service. But looking at the utility company's permit records, I couldn't find any application for that kind of power load. My commercial-grade electrical meter had been showing some strange usage patterns too, little spikes during Christmas season that didn't correspond to anything in my house. I'd been meaning to look into it, but between work and Jennifer's surgery, it slipped my mind. At 3 a.m., I put on my work boots and grabbed a flashlight. The utility easement behind our house was dark and quiet, just the distant hum of air conditioners fighting the Texas heat. The main electrical junction for our section of the neighborhood was tucked behind a screen of decorative shrubs. That's where I found it. An unmarked electrical line running from my commercial meter straight toward the community Christmas display area. Professional installation, but no permits, no documentation, no notification. Someone had tapped into my electrical service illegally. I followed the line with my flashlight, documenting everything with photos. The connection was hidden behind the decorative wall at our main entrance, feeding directly into the massive electrical panel that controlled the synchronized light show. For 2 years, I'd been paying for Vivian's Christmas spectacle. My commercial electrical rates, 40% higher than residential, had been funding their $80,000 display. The theft totaled over $2,800 so far, and that was just what I could calculate quickly. In Texas, utility theft over $2,500 is a third-degree felony, punishable by 2 to 10 years in prison. I stood there in the dark, listening to the hum of stolen electricity powering Christmas magic, and started to smile. Vivian wanted to play games about community standards? Fine. Let's talk about the standard that says you don't steal from your neighbors. The next morning, Jennifer noticed I was in a better mood despite the sleepless night. "You figured something out, didn't you?" she asked over coffee. I kissed her forehead. "Let's just say Christmas is about to get a lot more interesting around here." But first, I needed to understand exactly what I was dealing with, and Vivian was about to make that very clear. 2 days after the committee meeting, Vivian escalated from citations to what she called community protection measures. She scheduled a full HOA board meeting for Saturday morning, complete with a local city councilman as special advisor. Word was this councilman happened to be her golf partner at the country club. The meeting notice that appeared in everyone's mailbox was a masterpiece of bureaucratic intimidation. Emergency session, addressing properties that diminish community appeal and property values. She wasn't just coming after me anymore. She was positioning my Christmas display as a threat to everyone's investment. But here's where Vivian made her first real mistake. She decided to involve the media. She planted a story with the Preston Estates newsletter about maintaining our award-winning holiday display standards. The article quoted unnamed neighbors expressing concern about properties that don't contribute appropriately to our community's reputation. Then came the petition. Vivian organized what she called concerned residents to sign a formal complaint about my failure to maintain aesthetic standards consistent with property values. 15 signatures, mostly from families whose own displays cost more than my annual electrical budget. The psychological pressure was intense. Neighbors who used to wave when they saw me walking our dog suddenly found other directions to look. Emma came home from school upset because her boyfriend's parents had suggested maybe he shouldn't visit our house anymore. They were worried about being associated with a family that might be facing foreclosure. Jennifer broke down crying that Friday night. Maybe we should just borrow the money, she said. Put it on credit cards, hire their decorator, make this all go away. But I'd been busy that week. Every evening after work, I'd been tracing electrical lines and documenting connections. What I found made my blood boil. The illegal electrical tap wasn't some amateur job. This was professional work, carefully hidden and deliberately disguised. The contractor who installed it knew exactly what they were doing. And checking the dates against my work records, I knew exactly when it happened. November 2021. Right after the HOA voted to expand their Christmas display budget. I'd been out of town that week, installing electrical systems for a new subdivision in Plano. Someone had used my absence to access my electrical service and create their permanent theft connection. I pulled the original electrical installation contracts for Preston Estates' Christmas display. The work order was signed by someone I knew, Danny Whitfield, a contractor I'd worked with for years, but Danny's signature was on a work order for temporary seasonal electrical connection, not the permanent installation I'd discovered. That's when I found the smoking gun. In my email archives from November 2021, there it was, an email from Vivian Sterling to Danny Whitfield copied to the HOA board. Please ensure the Christmas display electrical work is managed efficiently to minimize ongoing operational costs. Managed efficiently. That was her way of saying, steal it. I called Danny that Saturday morning before the board meeting. Hey man, I need to ask you about a job you did in 2021. Marcus, good to hear from you. Which job? The Preston Estates Christmas display wiring. I'm seeing some weird meter readings. Long pause. Oh man, I was hoping that wouldn't come back up. What happened, Danny? Look, I'll be straight with you. The HOA president offered me an extra $8,000 to creatively manage the power source. Said it was temporary, just for one season. I should have said no, but business was slow and... You tapped my commercial meter. I'm sorry, Marcus. I documented it as temporary, but they never asked me to remove it. When I tried to bring it up the next year, they said it was working fine and to leave it alone. So there it was. Vivian had bribed a contractor to steal electricity from my meter. She knew it was theft. She had authorized it personally. And she'd been covering it up for 2 years while threatening to foreclose on my house for not spending enough money on Christmas decorations. The board meeting was held in the community center with about 40 neighbors in attendance. Vivian presented her case like a prosecutor going after a serial killer. Charts showing property values, expert testimony from her decorator friend, and a slideshow of comparable community standards from other upscale neighborhoods. The city councilman nodded along, making notes on his legal pad. We certainly can't have properties that bring down the whole area, he said when Vivian finished her presentation. No, sir, I said, standing up. We sure can't. That's when I requested permission to address the board. Vivian tried to shut me down, but the councilman overruled her. Let the man speak. This is America. I stood up, my voice calm and steady. You're absolutely right, Councilman. We can't have properties that bring down the whole area. That's why I'm very interested in community standards, especially the standard that says you don't steal from your neighbors. The room went quiet. Vivian's face went white. But we'll get to that later, I said, sitting back down. Y'all have a nice meeting now." After that board meeting, Vivian went into full panic mode. She knew I'd discovered something, but she wasn't sure what. So she did what desperate people with power always do. She escalated. Monday morning, I found a certified letter in my mailbox. Notice of immediate foreclosure proceedings stamped across the top in red ink. The HOA was placing a lien on my property for failure to remedy continuing violations of community standards. I had until Christmas Eve to comply or face legal action that could force the sale of my home. Christmas Eve. She was trying to ruin my family's Christmas while stealing our electricity to power her own display. The irony was so thick you could spread it on toast. But Vivian wasn't done. She started a whisper campaign about my financial problems. Suddenly, neighbors were crossing the street to avoid talking to me. My business phone stopped ringing as much. Word was getting around that the Reed family might be unstable. The final insult came Wednesday evening. Emma was walking our dog when she overheard two neighbors talking in their driveway. "I heard they can't afford to live here anymore," one said. "Maybe it's time they moved somewhere more appropriate for their budget." Emma came home in tears. "Dad, everyone's saying we're poor." "They're saying we don't belong here." That night, after Emma went to bed, Jennifer sat me down at the kitchen table. "Marcus, I can't take much more of this stress. My doctor says it's affecting my recovery. Maybe we should just what? Let them force us out of our home? Let them steal our electricity while calling us thieves?" "What are you talking about? Steal our electricity?" That's when I showed her everything. The photos of the illegal connections, Danny's confession about the bribery, the utility bills showing exactly how much they'd stolen, the legal research I'd done on Texas electrical theft laws. Jennifer stared at the evidence spread across our dining table. "They've been stealing from us this whole time? $2,800 over 2 years. And that's just the start. When you factor in that I pay commercial rates, 40% higher than residential, plus the interest and penalties, we're looking at over $8,000 in theft." I'd also discovered something else during my research. In Texas, utility theft over $2,500 isn't just a misdemeanor. It's a third-degree felony, punishable by 2 to 10 years in state prison. And when the theft involves commercial electrical rates and exceeds $5,000 in total damages, it can be charged as a second-degree felony with even harsher penalties. "So, what do we do?" Jennifer asked. "We give them exactly what they're asking for," I said. "Community standards." I'd been busy that week installing something special in our basement, a master electrical cutoff switch connected to a smartphone app that would let me control the power to my entire electrical service remotely. One tap on my phone and everything connected to my meter would go dark. Everything including their $80,000 Christmas spectacle. I'd also been coordinating with some new friends. Fire Marshal Johnson had been very interested to learn about an unpermitted 80,000-watt electrical installation in his jurisdiction. Unpermitted electrical work that large was not just a code violation. It was a safety hazard that could burn down half the neighborhood. Channel 5 News had been equally interested when I called them about a major electrical theft investigation scheduled for Christmas Eve. Their investigative reporter loved stories about wealthy people stealing from working families, and my attorney, Sarah Story, had prepared all the necessary paperwork for both civil and criminal complaints. Texas law allows victims of utility theft to recover triple damages plus attorney fees. Our total claim was approaching $25,000. Thursday evening, Vivian made her final mistake. She called me directly, her voice shaking with rage. "I don't know what game you think you're playing, Marcus, but this ends now. You have until Christmas Eve to comply with community standards, or you're out." "Yes, ma'am," I said calmly. "I understand completely. Community standards are very important." "The whole neighborhood is watching," she continued. "Everyone will see what happens to people who don't fit in here." "You're absolutely right, Vivian. Everyone's going to see exactly what happens. Christmas Eve is going to be very educational for a lot of folks." Christmas Eve morning, I woke up before dawn and checked my phone. The app was working perfectly. One touch of the screen and I could cut power to everything connected to my electrical service, including the illegal connection feeding their Christmas display. Jennifer found me drinking coffee in the kitchen, watching the sunrise through our window. Our simple Christmas display looked beautiful in the early morning light, warm, elegant, timeless. "You ready for tonight?" she asked. I kissed her and smiled. "Honey, I've been ready for this moment my whole life." The breakthrough came Friday morning, December 23rd, when I decided to dig deeper into the paperwork trail. I'd been focused on the electrical theft, but something about Danny's confession bothered me. Why would a contractor risk his license for an $8,000 bribe when he made that much on legitimate jobs every month? I pulled every document related to the HOA's Christmas display installation. Work orders, permits, payment records, board meeting minutes. That's when I found the smoking gun hidden in plain sight. The original electrical installation contract was dated November 15th, 2021. But buried in the HOA's financial records was a payment voucher dated November 1st, 2 weeks earlier. A check for $8,000 made out to Whitfield Electrical Services for Christmas display consultation and temporary electrical connections. Temporary. Danny had been paid specifically to create a temporary connection that was supposed to be removed after the holidays, but the payment records showed something else entirely. Every month since November 2021, the HOA had been filing utility expense reports with their insurance company claiming electrical costs for the Christmas display. They were committing insurance fraud, reporting fake electrical expenses while actually stealing the power from my meter. I called Sarah Story, my attorney, and asked her to pull the HOA's insurance claims for the past 2 years. What she found made my head spin. Marcus, they've been claiming electrical expenses of $1,200 per month for Christmas display operations. That's $14,400 annually in fraudulent insurance claims, while stealing the actual electricity from my meter. Exactly. This isn't just theft anymore. This is organized fraud involving multiple parties. But the biggest revelation was still coming. Sarah had also pulled the complete email records from the civil discovery process. Vivian Sterling's emails told the whole story. November 1st, 2021. Danny, we need to discuss creative solutions for the electrical requirements. The board has authorized additional compensation for innovative approaches to cost management. November 15th, 2021. Excellent work on the electrical connection. Please ensure all documentation reflects temporary installation status to maintain compliance flexibility. January 10th, 2022. The Christmas display electrical solution worked perfectly. Do not modify the current arrangement unless specifically requested. Vivian hadn't just authorized the theft. She had planned it, orchestrated it, and covered it up. The temporary connection was always intended to be permanent. She had paid Danny $8,000 to commit a felony on her behalf. And there was more. The email trail showed that when Danny had tried to contact the HOA about removing the temporary connection after the 2022 Christmas season, Vivian had explicitly told him to leave it in place. The current arrangement is working efficiently for all parties, she'd written. No changes necessary. The power dynamic had completely shifted. I wasn't dealing with an overzealous HOA president anymore. I was dealing with someone who had committed multiple felonies and was now threatening my family to cover up her crimes. Sarah walked me through the charges Vivian was facing. Electrical theft over $2,500, third-degree felony. Bribery of a contractor, second-degree felony. Insurance fraud over $10,000, first-degree felony. Conspiracy to commit theft, additional felony charges. If convicted on all counts, Sarah said, she's looking at 5 to 15 years in state prison. But that afternoon, I called Fire Marshal Johnson and shared the complete evidence package. He was particularly interested in the fact that the unpermitted electrical work had been installed through bribery and conspiracy. Mr. Reed, he said, this is the most clear-cut case of criminal utility theft I've seen in 20 years. We'll be coordinating with the district attorney's office for the Christmas Eve operation. I hung up the phone and realized something had fundamentally changed. For weeks, I'd been playing defense, trying to protect my family from Vivian's harassment. Now I was playing offense, and Vivian had no idea what was coming. Saturday morning, December 24th, I woke up with the calm confidence of a man who holds all the cards. Today wasn't about revenge anymore. Today was about justice. My phone buzzed with a text from Fire Marshal Johnson. Team assembled, news crew confirmed for 7:45 p.m., district attorney's office sending investigators. This is going to be bigger than we thought. Bigger than we thought. Turns out when you hand law enforcement a gift-wrapped case involving multiple felonies committed by wealthy suspects, they get very interested very quickly, especially when it's all documented with photos, emails, and contractor confessions. I started my Christmas Eve by installing the final piece of my plan. The master electrical cutoff switch had been ready for days, but I wanted to add one finishing touch. A backup power supply for my house, so when I cut the main electrical feed, my family's Christmas lights would stay on. Call it poetic justice. The backup system was simple but elegant. A battery bank hidden in my garage, connected through an automatic transfer switch. When the main power died, my house would seamlessly switch to backup power. My simple Christmas display would be the only lights visible in the entire neighborhood. Jennifer found me in the garage, putting the finishing touches on the wiring. How long will the backup power last? About 4 hours. Long enough for everyone to get the message. And you're sure this is legal? I showed her the letter from our attorney. Sarah's confirmed everything. I have the absolute right to control access to my electrical service. Cutting power to stop ongoing theft isn't just legal. It's required under Texas law once I become aware of the theft. The legal framework was ironclad. Texas Property Code gives utility customers explicit rights to prevent unauthorized use of their electrical service. Once I documented the theft and notified law enforcement, I was legally obligated to stop the ongoing crime by any means necessary. The smartphone app controlling the cutoff switch was installed and tested. One touch of the red button, and everything connected to my electrical meter would go dark in under 2 seconds, including every single light in the HOA's $80,000 Christmas spectacular. At 2 p.m., Fire Marshal Johnson called with the final coordination details. We've got 3 investigators from the DA's office, 2 utility inspectors, and a fraud specialist from the insurance company. Channel 5 News is bringing their full investigative crew. This story is going statewide. Statewide. What had started as a neighborhood dispute about Christmas decorations was about to become a major news story about HOA abuse and criminal conspiracy. I'd also been working on the evidence presentation. Sarah had prepared a digital folder containing every photo, email, document, and financial record related to the theft. The folder was loaded on my phone, ready to share with investigators and news crews. The timeline was perfect. Preston Estates' Christmas Eve celebration started at 6 p.m. with hot chocolate and carol singing in the community center. The synchronized light show began at 7 p.m., drawing the usual crowd of 800 cars full of families coming to see the Dallas Christmas spectacle. Vivian had scheduled herself to give a community appreciation speech at 8:15 p.m., right in the middle of peak viewing time. She planned to thank the HOA board for their investment in maintaining our standards while positioned directly in front of the massive Christmas display. What she didn't know was that her speech would be broadcast live on Channel 5 News as part of their holiday celebration coverage. The news crew would be positioned to capture both Vivian's speech and the crowd's reaction to what happened next. At exactly 8:16 p.m., 30 seconds into Vivian's speech about community standards, I would tap the red button on my phone. 80,000 watts of stolen Christmas magic would disappear instantly, leaving Vivian standing in sudden darkness in front of 800 cars full of confused families and rolling news cameras. Emma found me reviewing the plan one final time. "Dad, are you nervous?" "Nervous? Honey, I've been looking forward to this moment for weeks. What if something goes wrong?" I showed her my phone with the electrical cutoff app open and ready. "Sweet pea, I've been an electrician for 30 years. The only thing that can go wrong is if their display doesn't go dark when I cut the power. And trust me, it will." At 6 p.m., we walked over to the community center as a family. Jennifer wore her nicest dress. Emma had helped me pick out a tie that matched our Christmas colors. We looked like the respectable, law-abiding family we'd always been. As we approached the crowd gathering around the Christmas display, I patted my phone in my pocket one more time. The app was ready. The evidence was prepared. The authorities were in position. It was time to give the neighborhood the Christmas light show they'd never forget. By 6:30 p.m., the Preston Estates Christmas Eve celebration was in full swing. 300 neighbors mingled around the community center, sipping hot chocolate that tasted like it came from packets mixed with artificial everything. The smell of cinnamon and fake vanilla couldn't quite mask the underlying chemical odor from the fog machines creating winter atmosphere in 76-degree weather. I positioned myself near the main Christmas display, phone in hand, watching Vivian work the crowd like a politician running for office. She moved from group to group in a red designer dress that probably cost more than most families' entire Christmas budget, accepting compliments on her spectacular light show. That's when I noticed the first sign that tonight wasn't going according to Vivian's plan. 2 men in suits were standing near the HOA office, taking photos of the electrical installations. One of them was writing detailed notes on a clipboard. Fire Marshal Johnson caught my eye from across the crowd and nodded almost imperceptibly. His people were in position. At 7 p.m. sharp, the synchronized light show began. 40,000 LED lights pulsed in perfect rhythm to carol of the bells, while snow machines pumped artificial flakes into the humid air. Animatronic reindeer danced in mechanical precision. Laser projectors painted snowflakes on the sides of nearby houses. 800 cars lined up outside the gates, families pressing against windows to see the famous Dallas Christmas spectacle. Children's faces lit up with wonder at the technological marvel spread before them. For a moment, I almost felt bad about what I was going to do. Then I remembered the $15,000 in medical bills, the foreclosure threat, Emma coming home in tears because neighbors called us the poor family. At 7:45 p.m., I spotted the Channel 5 news van pulling through the gates. The investigative crew Sarah had contacted was here for their feature story on holiday celebrations. What they were actually here for was the biggest utility theft bust in Dallas County history. Vivian was in her element, giving an impromptu interview to the news crew about the community investment in maintaining our standards. She gestured proudly at the synchronized display behind her, explaining how the HOA board had creatively managed resources to deliver this magical experience. Creatively managed resources. That was one way to describe stealing electricity. The reporter, a sharp-looking woman named Rebecca Martinez, was asking all the right questions. This display must be expensive to operate. How does the HOA manage those electrical costs? We're very efficient with our power management, Vivian replied smoothly. The board has implemented innovative cost control measures that keep expenses minimal while delivering maximum impact. I almost laughed out loud. She was confessing to theft on live television while describing it as innovative cost control measures. At 8 p.m., the crowd reached peak size. The synchronized display was running its full program, 30 minutes of choreographed lights, music, and special effects that drew gasps and applause from hundreds of viewers. This was Vivian's moment of triumph, the annual celebration of her power and influence in the community. She made her way to the small stage the HOA had set up near the main display. A microphone was waiting, positioned perfectly for the news cameras to capture her speech against the backdrop of 80,000 watts of stolen Christmas magic. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her voice carrying across the crowd through speakers that cost more than my truck. "Welcome to another magnificent Christmas celebration here in Preston Estates." Applause rippled through the audience. Children on parents' shoulders clapped their mittened hands. The news crew zoomed in for close-ups of Vivian's beaming smile. "Tonight represents the best of what our community can achieve when we all commit to the same high standards," she continued. "Some people might ask why we invest so much in creating this magical experience. The answer is simple. Excellence requires dedication." I checked my phone. 8:14 p.m. 60 seconds until showtime. "That's why our board takes community standards so seriously," Vivian was saying. "We can't allow properties that diminish our collective investment. We can't tolerate residents who refuse to contribute appropriately to our shared vision." She was talking about my family. On Christmas Eve, in front of 300 neighbors and a news crew, she was publicly shaming us for being too poor to compete with her stolen light show. "That's why I'm proud to announce that the Aesthetics Committee has successfully resolved our recent compliance issues," she continued. "Effective January 1st, all properties will meet our established standards, or the owners will find alternative housing arrangements more suited to their budget limitations." Alternative housing arrangements. She was announcing our foreclosure on live television. I looked at Jennifer, who was holding Emma's hand tightly. My daughter's face was flushed with embarrassment and anger. My wife looked like she was about to cry. Enough was enough. I opened the app on my phone and placed my thumb over the red cutoff button. 8:15 p.m. Exactly, it was time for some real community standards. And that's why I want to personally thank our board members for their unwavering commitment to maintaining our stand. I tapped the red button. In less than 2 seconds, 80,000 watts of Christmas magic died completely. The 40-foot LED trees went dark. The laser projectors stopped mid-snowflake. The animatronic reindeer froze in place like mechanical corpses. The fog machines wheezed to a halt, leaving half-formed clouds hanging in the suddenly quiet air. 800 cars full of families sat in complete darkness. 300 neighbors stood in stunned silence. The only sounds were confused murmurs and the distant hum of traffic from the highway. And in the middle of it all, Vivian Sterling stood frozen at the microphone, her mouth open in shock, illuminated only by the news crew's camera lights. The only Christmas display still glowing was mine. My simple white lights and handcrafted nativity, running on backup power, created a warm island of light in the sudden darkness. The poetic justice was so perfect, it took my breath away. "What happened?" someone shouted from the crowd. "Did we lose power?" called another voice. "Is this part of the show?" Vivian frantically looked around, trying to understand what had gone wrong. The news cameras kept rolling, capturing her confusion and panic in high definition. This was not the image of control and competence she'd spent years cultivating. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said into the microphone, her voice shaky, "we seem to be experiencing a minor technical difficulty. I'm sure we'll have the display restored momentarily." That's when I stepped forward. "Actually, Vivian, there's no technical difficulty at all." My voice carried clearly across the silent crowd. "The display is working exactly as designed." Every head turned toward me. The news cameras swiveled to capture this unexpected development. Fire Marshal Johnson was moving through the crowd with his investigators, positioning themselves for what came next. "You see, folks," I continued, walking closer to the stage, "that beautiful light show you've been enjoying for the past 2 years? It's been running on stolen electricity. Every single light, every special effect, every magical moment, powered by electricity stolen from my commercial meter." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Parents looked confused. Teenagers started taking videos with their phones. The Channel 5 news crew moved in closer, sensing they'd stumbled onto a much bigger story than they'd expected. Vivian's face went pale in the camera lights. That's absolutely ridiculous. Marcus, you're clearly having some kind of breakdown." "Am I?" I pulled out my phone and opened the evidence folder Sarah had prepared. "Fire Marshal Johnson, would you mind taking a look at these photos?" Johnson stepped forward, his official badge glinting in the light from my Christmas display. "Mr. Reed, are these the electrical connections we discussed?" "Yes, sir. Photos showing the illegal tap into my commercial electrical service installed in November 2021 by a contractor who was paid $8,000 to create what was supposed to be a temporary connection." I turned to face the crowd, my voice steady and clear. "For 2 years, I've been paying 40% higher commercial electrical rates to power their Christmas show. $2,800 stolen directly from my meter, while they threatened to foreclose on my house for not spending enough money on my own decorations." The crowd's murmur was getting louder. Neighbors were looking back and forth between me and Vivian, trying to process what they were hearing. "Furthermore," I continued, "the HOA has been filing false insurance claims, reporting electrical expenses for the Christmas display while actually stealing the power. That's insurance fraud, multiple felonies, committed by your elected HOA president." Rebecca Martinez from Channel 5 stepped forward with her microphone. "Mrs. Sterling, how do you respond to these allegations?" Vivian's composure was cracking. This is clearly a desperate attempt by someone facing foreclosure to deflect attention from his own violations." "Violations?" I almost laughed. "The only violation here is theft. Theft committed by you, authorized by you, and covered up by you for 2 years. That's when Fire Marshal Johnson stepped onto the stage. "Mrs. Sterling, I need you to step away from the microphone. We have some questions about unpermitted electrical installations and possible utility theft." Behind him, 2 investigators from the district attorney's office were setting up a table with evidence folders and recording equipment. This wasn't just an HOA dispute anymore. This was a criminal investigation happening live on local television. "How's that for community standards, Vivian?" I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "You wanted everyone to see what happens to people who don't follow the rules. Well, you're absolutely right. Everyone's going to see exactly what happens." The news cameras captured everything. Vivian's panicked face, the investigators setting up their equipment, and in the background, my simple Christmas display, providing the only light in a neighborhood suddenly gone dark. What happened next unfolded like a perfectly choreographed performance, except Vivian Sterling wasn't the director anymore. She was the unwilling star of her own downfall. Fire Marshal Johnson approached the microphone with the calm authority of someone who'd dealt with criminals trying to talk their way out of evidence for 20 years. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry to interrupt your Christmas Eve celebration, but we have a serious safety and legal matter to address." The crowd pressed closer, 800 families in cars outside the gates could see the flashing lights of additional emergency vehicles arriving. What they'd come to see was a Christmas light show, but what they were witnessing was the most spectacular public downfall in Preston Estates history. Mrs. Sterling, Johnson continued, our investigation has revealed multiple violations of electrical codes, including an unpermitted 80,000-watt installation connected through illegal means to a neighboring property's electrical service. Rebecca Martinez positioned herself where her cameraman could capture both Vivian's face and the dead Christmas display behind her. This story was about to make her career. The electrical installation we've discovered, Johnson explained to the crowd, constitutes theft of utilities under Texas Penal Code Section 31.04. Given the amount involved and the duration of the theft, we're looking at multiple felony charges. Vivian tried one last desperate play. This is all a misunderstanding. Any electrical work was done by licensed contractors following proper procedures. That's when I stepped forward with my phone. Would you like to see the email where you instructed Danny Whitfield to creatively manage the power source? Or the one where you told him to ensure all documentation reflects temporary installation status? I handed my phone to Rebecca Martinez. On the screen was Vivian's email from November 2021. Danny, we need to discuss creative solutions for the electrical requirements. The board has authorized additional compensation for innovative approaches to cost management. Rebecca read the email aloud for her viewers. The crowd erupted in angry murmurs. These weren't just random neighbors anymore. These were Preston Estates residents realizing they'd been lied to by their own HOA president. You paid a contractor to steal electricity, called out Tom Morrison from 3 houses down, while threatening to foreclose on Marcus for not spending enough on Christmas lights. She's been stealing from all of us, shouted another voice. Our HOA dues have been subsidizing theft. Vivian was trapped. 300 angry neighbors, rolling news cameras, and law enforcement officers surrounded her on all sides. Her carefully constructed image of authority and respectability was crumbling in real time. District Attorney Investigator Sarah Story, no relation to my attorney, stepped onto the stage with a folder full of criminal charges. Mrs. Sterling, you're under arrest for theft of utilities, conspiracy to commit theft, and insurance fraud. You have the right to remain silent. As the Miranda rights echoed through the microphone across the silent crowd, I looked around at the faces illuminated by news camera lights and my simple Christmas display. Shock, anger, and a growing sense of justice being served. Mr. Reed, Rebecca Martinez turned her microphone toward me. What do you want people to know about what happened here tonight? I looked directly into the camera, thinking about every working family dealing with medical bills, every neighbor who'd ever been bullied by someone with more money and power. I want people to know that community standards work both ways, I said. If you're going to demand excellence from your neighbors, you better make sure you're not a criminal yourself. And if you're going to threaten someone's family over Christmas decorations, you better make sure you're not stealing the electricity to power your own display. The crowd erupted in applause. Even some of the families in cars outside the gates were honking their horns and cheering. As Vivian was led away in handcuffs, past the dead Christmas display and through the crowd of neighbors she'd spent years intimidating, the only lights visible in the entire community were mine. Simple, elegant, honest lights powered by electricity I'd paid for with money I'd earned through honest work. Emma squeezed my hand. Dad, everyone's looking at our house. She was right. With the massive HOA display dark, every eye was drawn to our simple Christmas scene. The handcrafted nativity, the warm white lights, the cedar wreath that smelled like a real Christmas tree. It looked exactly like what it was, a family's honest celebration of the season. Let them look, sweetheart, I said. Let them see what Christmas is supposed to look like. Jennifer wrapped her arms around both of us. I love you, she whispered. Both of you. This was perfect. Behind us, the news cameras were capturing the final shots of their story. The former HOA president in handcuffs, the dead theft-powered Christmas display, and the Reed family's simple, beautiful, legally powered lights glowing like a beacon of honesty in the darkness. Community standards, indeed. Christmas morning brought 3 gifts I hadn't expected. The first was a phone call from the new interim HOA president, elected by emergency vote at 10 p.m. on Christmas Eve. The board had unanimously voted to pay full restitution for the stolen electricity, plus damages, plus my legal fees. Total settlement, $18,400. The second gift was Channel 5's follow-up story. which had gone viral overnight. Texas HOA president arrested for stealing electricity while threatening foreclosure was trending on social media across 3 states. The video of Vivian's downfall had been watched 2.3 million times by noon on Christmas Day. The third gift was the best one. Emma's smile when she woke up and saw our Christmas display still glowing softly in the morning light, exactly as it should be. By New Year's Day, the full scope of Vivian's crimes had unraveled completely. The district attorney's investigation revealed she'd stolen over $12,000 in electricity, filed fraudulent insurance claims totaling $28,000, and had been skimming HOA dues to pay for personal expenses. Her husband filed for divorce on January 2nd, citing public humiliation and criminal conduct. The new HOA board, led by reasonable people who actually lived in the real world, implemented immediate reforms. Christmas display budgets were capped at $5,000 maximum. All electrical work required proper permits and licensed contractors. And they created a new position, Electrical Safety Coordinator, with a $15,000 annual budget to ensure all community electrical work met proper standards. Guess who got that job? More importantly, they established the Preston Estates Medical Assistance Foundation with the money recovered from Vivian's fraud. The foundation provides emergency financial assistance to families facing medical crises, helping cover everything from prescription costs to utility bills during recovery periods. Jennifer's health improved dramatically once the stress disappeared. Her follow-up surgery in February went perfectly, and her doctors were amazed at how much better she looked. "It's like a weight has been lifted off your whole family," Dr. Patterson told us. Emma organized the neighborhood's first classic Christmas contest, celebrating elegant restraint over expensive excess. 12 families participated, creating beautiful displays focused on craftsmanship and creativity rather than budget size. The winner was Mrs. Rodriguez, an 80-year-old widow whose handmade paper snowflakes created magic that no amount of money could buy. My electrical business exploded with new clients after the story went national. Apparently, the guy who caught the Christmas light thief was exactly the kind of honest contractor people wanted working on their homes. I hired 2 new apprentices and started a partnership with the local trade school to train the next generation of electricians. But the best outcome was community-wide. Preston Estates transformed from a neighborhood where people competed over who could spend the most money into a place where neighbors actually talked to each other. The artificial pressure to outspend everyone else disappeared, replaced by appreciation for creativity, craftsmanship, and genuine community spirit. 6 months later, Channel 5 won a regional Emmy for investigative reporting. Rebecca Martinez sent us a photo of her award with a note. "Thank you for proving that sometimes the best stories find you." And Vivian, she pled guilty to multiple felonies in exchange for 2 years in state prison and full restitution to all victims. Her former mansion went up for sale to pay legal fees and damages. Last I heard, she was working in the prison laundry, learning what honest work actually feels like. This Christmas, our neighborhood's decorations tell a different story. Instead of competing over who can spend the most, families focus on creating something meaningful. The Morrison family built a workshop in their garage and makes handcrafted ornaments for everyone on the block. The Story family organized a cookie exchange that's become a monthly tradition. Mrs. Rodriguez teaches paper snowflake classes that draw kids from 3 different streets. Emma's applying to college now, with a full scholarship funded by the Medical Assistance Foundation. She wants to study electrical engineering and social justice. "I want to help people the way Dad helped us," she told me. As for me, I still check that smartphone app sometimes just to remember the moment everything changed. But these days, instead of cutting off thieves' power, I use my skills to help elderly neighbors upgrade their electrical systems and teach kids about electrical safety. Because that's what real community standards look like.
So Margaret Ray didn't just will his Christmas light battle. He explored criminal conspiracies hiding behind community standards. Sometimes justice comes wrapped in the most unexpected packages. Here what separates Marcus from most people facing HOA abuse. He understood that emotional reactions to words, but documented evidence will with them. While Vivian Sterling was busy flexing her authority, Marcus was quietly building an ironclad case. Real lessons? Power without honesty is just stealing with better marketing. Vivian thought she was untouchable because she had money and a title. Marcus proved that honest work and knowing your rights will always be scorching in the end. We have all met on our Vivian story that person who mistake authority for characters. The question is, when someone tries to bully you with fake rules and real consequences, do you have patience to fight smart instead of fighting mad? Because as Mark learned, sometimes the best revenge is just turning on the lights. Hit subscribe if you believe justice to be served cold, calculated, and perfectly legal. And tell me in the comment, what is your HOA owner story? Because every neighborhood deserves better than people who take advantage and call themselves leaders.